Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Avery Sudsbury.
Hi.
Avery is a Master of Environment and Sustainability candidate at Western University. She is a circular economy enthusiast. Today, we will discuss Avery's project on landfill gas management systems and their impact on health and the environment. It's a pleasure to have you on my show, Avery.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Avery, what brought your interest to the issue of waste management?
It's a long story. I was leaving my high school studies with very little idea of what I wanted to do. And I actually grew up in an area where climate change is still kind of a debated topic. So
Mm,
environmental fields weren't really like a known option.
yeah.
But I did have the option to take an online environmental science course in grade
Mm,
12 because they
mm.
just didn't teach that at my 300-person school. Needless to say, I loved it. So I've always
Yeah,
been very purpose driven, and
yeah,
complex layers of problem solving needed for
yeah,
sustainability was really exciting for me.
yeah, yeah. After high school, you went to did your undergraduate degree in environmental studies.
Yes, I applied to the environmental studies in environment and business at the
Yeah,
University of Waterloo.
yeah,
Um, it really sold itself on addressing the separation between economy and environment. And
yeah,
I kind of wanted to integrate sustainability into everything we do.
yeah,
They also had a five co-op term package that was really
yeah,
cool for me.
yeah. And on a personal note, what really, obviously, environmental is a big issue. Is anything something that stuck to you? Say, you know what, I really want to study more, and something really, I'm so passionate about it.
I think I think it was really built on the people I was surrounded with. I tend
Mm,
to like really grab direction from people around me.
yeah,
So when I joined like the eco club in my high school, I saw there were so many people passionate about
yeah,
like Earth Day and turning our lights off
yeah.
and reducing our waste, and I really grabbed onto that and
Nice.
found a home there.
Yeah, and I know that you definitely are very interested in the waste management and landfills.
Absolutely, yeah. So with my co-op at the University of Waterloo, I had a chance to jump into a waste management role with the region of Peel. And I
Yeah.
did some education work there, and I got to chat
Oh,
with students and pe
yeah,
people in apartment buildings.
yeah,
And I found it was a good topic that everyone can understand and it's really easy
yeah,
to take action on.
yeah. And I think that's why for your master's project, you were studying the impact of landfills on human health and environment. Can you tell us a little bit about your project, Avery?
Yes, absolutely. So I worked on a landfill with the region of Waterloo as another co-op term, and I saw that they only had about 25 years of expected space left with their landfill, which is very high for Ontario, actually. We have
Yeah,
an estimate around 10 years. So
yeah,
I thought about looking into
mm,
why landfills are closing or why
yeah,
we need more landfill space.
yeah,
So the project I'm working on is for an ecosystem health and environmental analysis course, and
yeah.
it's designed for students to look at R programming and QGIS to hypothesize interest related to ecosystem health.
Hmm,
Um, one thing I haven't touched on is Bill 197, which is the
hmm.
COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. And that
Okay.
amended the Environmental Assessment Act,
Yeah,
which makes it more difficult for us to build or expand landfills because it
yeah,
improves the public consultation process.
yeah,
So I was looking at, based on available data, what are some challenges
hmm,
that come into play when there's such a need for landfills,
yeah,
but it's so diverse
yeah.
and we don't know where to put our waste soon.
Ah,
So my general expectations for my project were that I would be able to use the data on what kind of gas management systems are in place
hmm.
of Ontario's landfills
Okay.
and relate that to air quality and toxic pollutant releases.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you probably visited several of these landfill sites.
I've been there personally. I wasn't able to travel to many of them, but working on the
Yeah,
Waterloo site and then
yeah,
some to home in Kawartha Lakes, I
yeah,
have been to some.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you also talk about, I know in Ontario they have like private and public landfill sites. Can you talk about what differences do you notice in your visit?
For sure. Yeah. A lot of our municipal or publicly sites are publicly
Yeah,
funded. So it depends
yeah.
on stream of
Mm,
if people have to pay their tipping fees when they come in. And
okay.
those are typically residential waste you see.
Yeah,
So like the containers, food
yeah,
waste, etc. Whereas a
yeah,
lot of the private landfills
yeah,
accept construction waste and things from businesses.
yeah.
There is some
Nice.
overlap.
So would you share how are you conducting your project?
Yeah, it doesn't follow a formal literature path just because it's a
Okay.
course-based program.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time familiarizing myself with the requirements in our Environmental Assessment Act for like
Okay.
mitigation measures on landfills. So a
Okay.
lot of our landfill
Yeah.
sites didn't require that you collect the gas up until
Okay.
1998,
Oh, okay.
but the landfills were existent before then, so you had to
Uh,
kind of implement systems after the landfills
yeah.
were in place.
Yeah, which is very
Yeah,
interesting saying that they haven't started collecting gas. So I guess in the meantime, gas was really going in the environment and probably have a lot of impact on the local ecosystem.
absolutely. Some were doing measures to collect and flare the gas, but it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily a requirement. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I focused on the landfill gas collection, use, and
Yeah.
destruction data set by
Okay.
the government of Ontario.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
looked at whether they flare it, so like they burn and release it, or collect
Okay.
it and convert it to energy for the grid.
Okay. 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 And did you have to go collect some data with regards to this sites?
Yeah, I did all open source data. I didn't collect any data myself,
Okay.
just
Okay.
all secondary.
Okay. Okay. And what about some of the industry partners you are involved in your project?
I have conversations with Comcor.
Okay.
They do gas collection systems at some of the
Okay.
landfills.
Okay.
Um, there's it's pretty diverse. A lot of landfill sites
Mm,
have partnerships with smaller companies
mm,
to convert that gas
mm.
to electricity.
Yeah.
Um, but it was about like reaching out to them and seeing exactly what they do at one landfill because it can differ a
Yeah.
lot from another.
Yeah. 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 So are you done with your project? Or still project is in a still ongoing project at this stage?
I am officially done with that project for
Okay.
my
Okay.
coursework, but
Okay.
personally, I'm still looking into it.
Okay. Because you'll enjoy this topic,
I
obviously.
do, yeah.
Yeah. Avery, what have you learned from your study?
I've learned a lot personally, but some things that I was really excited to share with my classmates are
Yeah.
that landfills are required to collect that gas now, but they aren't
Mm,
required to put it into the energy grid. So a lot of cities like Toronto, London,
yeah.
Hamilton, they all have
Mm,
these large circularity and carbon goals, but
yeah.
they haven't yet brought that to their landfill
Okay.
where they might want to collect that gas.
Yeah. So at this point, I was wondering, are this landfill gas collected and used for commercial purposes, or they just kind of burned, basically?
It's It's increased over the years.
Okay.
Right around now, we're about 60% of landfills are doing primarily
Hmm.
flaring the gas,
Hmm.
and the rest of them a mix of both or collecting.
Hmm.
So many landfills,
Hmm.
including Waterloo
Hmm.
and Ottawa, collect
Hmm.
the gas, send it
Hmm.
to a plant to be transformed into electricity and power
Okay.
around 6,000 homes in their energy grid.
Oh,
But there
nice.
are some private partnerships as well.
Okay. So you do see there's a huge potential to use this bioenergy to utilize this landfill gas for better use down the road.
Yeah, there's certainly a
Yeah.
potential. I think
Okay.
in Ontario right now, because we have such a strong nuclear and hydroelectricity
Oh,
grid,
I
we
see.
are focused on developing the technology, but we
Okay.
do have the possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking down the road, there's
Yeah.
going to be, because we're running out of that landfill space and they're pushing
Yeah.
making less
Yeah.
waste in general, I
Yeah.
think we might be focused on looking at other solutions rather than
Yeah.
fixing things we have right now.
Yeah. And what are some of the potential solutions you can think of in terms of utilizing those landfill spaces? Because you
Right.
said that, they collect so fast, the garbage is piling up so shortly. Landfill have a short shelf life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know our government has given some permission to municipalities to look into like
Hmm.
waste to energy or
Okay.
incineration. Um,
Okay.
a lot of people, especially environmentalists, are really focused on circularity, things like the
Hmm.
Right to Repair Act, so we don't
Hmm.
like that waste to begin with.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 So when you go to these sites, visited, what was your first impression when you go and see them? Obviously, they probably smell, I'm
Oh,
assuming.
absolutely. Yeah, well, I when I was working on the region of Waterloo landfill,
Yeah. Yeah.
up 100 feet in the air, and you know you're standing on that's just waste from up to 50 years ago they had.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
crazy that it's almost like a man-made mountain. And
Yeah.
as we cover it with like grass on top, if you're driving by, you can't even tell that that's all of our garbage. So it feels like it's
Mm,
out of sight, but then we
yeah.
see these emissions in
Yeah.
the air.
So I know this is not a part of the project. So what happens once these landfill sites are full? Like how they use that space now? Like they
Hmm.
play golf on them or? or what happened there?
Well, that's a good question because those grounds shift a lot. You can't put
Yeah,
any structures on it.
yeah.
So some
Oh,
places have done like parks, ski
mm,
hills.
mm,
Um, those are the golf courses, yes. But you do also still have to like manage them for the next around 20 to 50 years after they close because
mm,
they're still
mm.
producing the gas and the
Yeah,
leachate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Recently, I was going through one of the landfill here locally, and they were building a road on it, and I saw still from the landfills the bottles coming out, some still heavy metals coming out. They haven't really disintegrated into the soil. There's still plastics coming out from this landfill.
A
So
lot of plastic.
basically, yeah.
Yeah,
So all this disposed materials still exist there. I mean, I know on the top there's the grass and whatnot, but underneath, the garbage still exists.
absolutely. And sometimes there aren't even good conditions under there for
Yeah,
the easiest things like newspapers to break down.
yeah. I want to ask you is what do you hope to contribute with your study?
I'm very much interested in destigmatizing the waste industry. The whole it's
Okay.
out of sight, it's off my curb, it's not my problem anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think like collective push for more policy, like extended producer responsibility,
Yeah.
and just like
Mm,
informing people, like if a
yeah.
landfill's next to you, it's not
Yeah.
just garbage, it's in your air, it's in your
Yeah.
water. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important for consumers to know that because like we
Mm,
have the ability to push for landfills not to be next to our communities, but even
yeah.
when we push them out, it's still
Yeah.
affecting our ecosystems.
Yeah, and and most of these landfills are away from the city, so we don't really go and see exactly the extent of what's happening there. But would you say that people should go and visit these landfills and see the garbage firsthand?
I think it's a great idea. A lot of landfills offer public tours, so you can go
Yeah,
and see exactly what's happening.
yeah, yeah,
Wouldn't be surprised
yeah,
if you went
yeah.
and saw the garbage you threw out a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was student at the University of Guelph, and I got to visit, they have a recycling plant in Guelph where they
Yes,
have all the garbage. I don't know if you got to visit that place. So
I
I
have been.
visited that, and when I saw that space, it's so interesting to see a garbage firsthand. What garbage comes from our house there? It really changed the whole perspective, and then start making you think that maybe we should think twice before we dispose any garbage. You know what I mean? Make less garbage because all garbage will land up there. And obviously in recycled places, they can't really use it, they can't recycle it. A lot of garbage land up into our landfills actually.
Absolutely. And so much of that is like things we can still use. Like
Yeah.
the things in our electronics that we throw out are perfectly
Yeah.
usable material, but now
Yeah.
it's sitting underground.
Yeah. Yeah. So Avery, what is your advice for future projects on this topic?
I think I think it's important to look at the historic data because landfills changed so much. It's
Mm,
so hard to figure out was this publicly owned at one point,
yeah.
privately owned,
Yeah.
and then you can use that to look at things like does
Yeah.
the age or how a landfill is managed
Yeah.
impact the types of pollutants it releases. I think it would be cool to dive further into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but even though the data is publicly available, it is kind of hard to come across. You really have to
Yeah.
dig for it. So it'd be
Yeah.
nice to see some more standardization of our
Yeah.
available data.
Yeah. 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 So what is next for you, Avery?
My program's a quick 1 year, so this summer I'll be doing a co-op, and I'd love to go into more of the private waste industry because I've done so
Yeah.
much public work, and I think it's
Mm,
important to see both sides.
yeah.
But beyond that, I'm really open to anything. I'd love to work outside of Ontario, learn more
Hmm.
about waste there, and I think I'd end up back in municipal at the end of the day because I love the
Mm,
people part, connecting and
mm,
education. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for your time, Avery, and best wishes on completing your master's degree.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.